Amanda finds yet another reason to be unhappy with Razvan. Statler tries to make her relationship with Dempsey work by doing everything that made her last relationship fail, and Christian might be ashamed of being with Cleo. Just like every other episode. Things between Amanda and Razvan have been a little tense. After a week of Amanda finding things to complain about, Razvan doesn't want any more fights, so he takes Amanda out on a nice romantic date to a traditional Moroccan restaurant.
I'm trying my best.
And things started off pretty good. Razvan's being pretty goofy and Amanda's laughing a lot. They get served this delicious looking food. Look at that. I mean, is that steak with chicken? But things take a turn for the worse when Amanda finds a new thing to complain about. While the two of them discuss meeting Razvan's parents soon, Razvan admits that he's had a goal ever since he was a child to eventually move to America. This is where things get a little bit weird, because we as the audience have known all along that this has been his goal. It was part of his character introduction in the beginning of the season. But despite us knowing that this whole time, Amanda apparently didn't. She's like, "What? I didn't know that." He's like, I definitely told you. You've never said that to me before. I told you from the beginning. If you told me that from the beginning, I would have thought it was a red flag. You don't think that's strange? Now, I'm no simp for Razvan. It's nothing personal, I just don't trust anybody with posture that good. But although I've had some suspicions about his character since the beginning of the season, I don't think he's a liar, and it's a little hard to believe that he hasn't mentioned this to her by now. I wonder if it was that sort of thing where in the beginning of the relationship, she's like, "Oh, dude, what do you think about coming to America?" And he's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to go to America. Since I was a kid, I wanted to go." And maybe she heard, "Oh yeah, he is interested in America or has always wanted to visit," and didn't really hear that, no, that's a specific goal of mine, that I've always wanted to move there. So no one's fault, and regardless of if she's heard this before, Razvan handles it very well. He picks up pretty quickly that arguing over the semantics or details of what was said before is probably a waste of time, and he goes straight to the matter of things and tries to reassure her by saying, "Hey, regardless of my desire to go to America, I'm in this relationship with you because I love you. It's not about America, it's not about the green card, I'm here for you." However, Amanda... you have to think about it from my position. I just have to be cautious. I have to ask these questions. I have to know your intentions. It's not just about me. It's about my kid and my other kid. We're bringing you into our lives, so it's really important that I know your intentions and why you're really here. And you know what? She's absolutely right. That makes perfect sense. It's very reasonable, understandable. I'd probably feel the same way. No problem at all with the contents of the message there. But the tone matters. Her tone feels very disapproving and hostile in a way you would expect if Razvan was being really dismissive or brushing her aside. But he wasn't. He seemed to be pretty calm and understanding. So when he's trying his best, but still feels like she's finding reasons to get worked up about things, or continues to approach him with a very distrusting, distant, somewhat hostile attitude, his feelings are hurt, and feels like Amanda doesn't really trust him. Despite that, he continues to have a great response and says, "All I can do is continue to be me and continue to love you, and hopefully with time you'll just start to see and believe that I'm really here for the right reasons." But he does still admit that he feels a little insecure that his partner, whom he loves and is spending all this time and emotional effort on, seems to be finding every excuse to get mad or disapprove of the relationship in some way.
She cannot stop herself, find reasons to argue.
And I think he hit the nail on the head with that one. It can be very frustrating when it feels like you're just trying to make things work, you're trying to be nice and sweet and understanding and take them out on dates, and your partner seems to be kind and nitpicking things or just not giving you the benefit of the doubt repeatedly. And if that keeps happening, that can feel exhausting and frustrating, and absolutely would make someone feel insecure, like, hey, why are they so committed to not being happy in this relationship? Do they just not like me? Do they just not want to be with me? Like, why is this so hard? But as frustrating as that is for Razvan, I think we can absolutely understand where Amanda's coming from. She is a widow. She lost her husband a few years ago and is now the single mother to 2 kids. And this is her first real relationship since that with her late husband. Amanda may have this source of fear and insecurity that manifests in various parts of her relationship, but she could be not correctly identifying that these little manifestations may not be actually problems with the relationship, and may just be coming from this inner source of fear that just pops up everywhere. For example, let's say I'm scared of going really fast on the freeway, but I'm driving with my buddy and I just have to deal with it for now. Maybe I'm sitting there in the passenger seat being real nervous, and instead of recognizing that my current state of fear is just because I have a fear of going fast on the freeway, I instead blamed it on every little thing I might notice in my surroundings. Hey, you're going a little too fast here. Hey, you just merged a little too quickly. Hey, your engine's making a weird noise. In the moment, I might have a sense of fear, but not necessarily understand where it's coming from. So when I look around and notice something, I can say that that is the source of my fear. We do this sort of thing all the time, and it's incredibly common in relationships. You may have heard of these issues by their common name,
commitment issues.
No, I don't have a fear of trusting one person and committing to them for the rest of my life. I'm just really good at finding reasons why no one is a good fit for me. And just like me in the car, the rational brain might even have some good justifications. Maybe my friend was going 5 miles over the speed limit. Maybe that merge was a little too close. Maybe we did have a miscommunication about your desire to go to America. So while you can't write it off and just ignore the rational brain completely, because it does have some validity, at some point you have to recognize and take ownership over your emotional brain. Yeah, my friend might have been going 5 miles over the speed limit, but that's not really why I'm an 8 out of 10 scared. And yeah, we might have had this disagreement, but the fact that I can't give them the benefit of the doubt, and that I distrust them so severely over these little mishaps, that's on me because I'm just scared of the whole thing. And I would wager that that is what we're essentially seeing with Amanda. But if the two of them together can talk about it, they might figure out that, okay, a lot of these problems in the relationship aren't really problems with our relationship. It's a problem with my fear of relationships. And once you can attribute your feelings to the correct problem, then you can start to solve the problem directly, instead of ruining a bunch of relationships that didn't need to be ruined, because the problem was never with them specifically. It was a problem that you had on the inside that you were bringing into all these situations. Except when she meets Razvan's friend later and she says that the relationship was toxic and you probably don't like him. Yeah, F that girl, totally justified in not liking her. That girl sucks. Statler and Dempsey. Statler and Dempsey go to meet Dempsey's dad, whom Dempsey has told almost nothing to regarding her relationship with Statler. Statler is shitting bricks about it, and I totally understand. It's already pretty nerve-wracking to meet the parents of your partner or some good friends where your first impression really matters. But it does make it extra scary when you've been in a relationship for several months and your partner has not told them anything about it. So I totally get it, and if I was in her position, I would also definitely compliment her dad on how he smells twice.
Nice to meet you. You smell really great. You smell good.
Yeah, that was pretty weird. So they meet the dad, and Dempsey finally admits, while being incredibly nervous to do so, that yeah, we're in a relationship. Things are a little awkward, so they draw attention to how awkward it is by throwing Statler under the bus and saying how awkward she is.
Statler's quite an awkward person. I am quite an awkward person, yes. Yeah. Ooh.
Which, as the awkward kid growing up, really made me die inside. But now that it's not me, I find it funny. But it's not too long that Statler reveals that she's been in England before, because she's dated an English woman before.
Statler has a thing for English girls.
Way to throw your girlfriend under the bus again, Dempsey. So obviously, Detective Dad over here is gonna ask about that. And Statler tells him that, yeah, I met this person online, I went over here to hopefully move in with them, but my ex thought that was way too fast and she essentially broke up with me on the spot. And Detective Dad, with a great intuition, immediately asks, okay, so the last time you came here, you wanted to quickly move in with someone? Are you doing that again with my daughter this time? To which Statler says, yeah, I'm doing that again. But the dad still likes Statler and says that he thinks that Statler is a really, really sweet, nice girl and is worried that she just might be pushing everything too fast. To which Dempsey agrees and tells us that she's worried whether or not Statler is just craving love in general or is really into her. And I think Dempsey and her dad had a very good idea about it. Sometimes people can just so need and crave the feeling of love that they can push everything way too fast just to get to the end goal of finally feeling loved and accepted. Now, this may just be a complete coincidence, but we also know that she has a thing with sexuality. It needs to be with a lot of people in extreme ways and in extreme places and needs to happen very quickly with my partner. And although that could be for a number of reasons, it could be that if you have a desperate need for love and connection, so much so that you push all your romantic relationships so quickly, another way to try to get your needs met could be through chasing a lot of physical experiences to get that feeling of love and connection. But when you have the blinders on that end goal, you can miss a lot of the important details along the way, like whether or not this is an actual genuine feeling of love and not infatuation, or if this person is even a good fit for you, or if this is a viable long-term solution, or how your partner feels about it. And it's that last one I think we can explore just a little bit more. Because she didn't tell Dempsey about her plan to move in with her, she wasn't that aware of what Dempsey may have wanted around that pushy, coercive stuff. And she also gave Dempsey a gift of like an insect thing, and then she realized that she gave Dempsey a gift that she herself wanted instead of thinking about what Dempsey would have wanted. And all that begs the question, is she so desperate for the love thing that she just kind of becomes blind to other people and their feelings sometimes? Is she so neurotic that she's just always ruminating about her own stresses and anxieties, that she has a hard time taking herself out of her head and kind of remembering other people? Or I should mention that one of the worst side effects of ADHD is that because our brains are so bad at filtering information and doesn't really prioritize things very well, that we can easily tunnel vision on one thing we really want, and it can be really hard for us to even notice anything else because our brain is so bad at prioritizing that it thinks that anything that doesn't involve this one singular goal must be irrelevant, so we'll just throw everything else away. So it could be a couple explanations, but at the end of the day, I do agree with Dempsey's dad that Statler really does seem like a very nice and sweet person, and whether it's an attachment insecurity that makes her push everything too fast, or it's a highly neurotic personality trait that makes it hard to consider other people's feelings, or it's an ADHD trait that she needs to better manage, Dempsey has to be wise about, and the two of them are going to have to figure out what exactly is going on with them in the future. Lastly, we have Christian and Cleo. Last night, Christian and Cleo did stuff physically. And I'm not dancing around the topic just because I'm worried about being demonetized. It's because all of their scenes revolve around what exactly happened and how they have two different accounts of it. Cleo tells the producers and her friend that they had sex last night, like making love, and that it was very intimate and a really great bonding moment for them and their relationship. But when the producers asked Christian, he kind of brushes the whole thing off and says, yeah, we hooked up, and got a double, which I assume means second base because it's baseball stuff. And when Cleo finds out that Christian didn't give the whole truth and referred to it in such a crude way, she felt very hurt and betrayed. If I'm Cleo in this situation, and maybe I'm watching the show as it airs with my partner and I find out that that's how they talked about that, I would already feel very insulted and hurt, and maybe even silly that I was out here
Being vulnerable and shit.
thinking that this was the special moment, and you were just like, whatever, we hooked up, we got a double. That's just such a gross way of talking about it, especially in comparison to the very heartfelt way that Cleo was talking about it. But it's made even worse because apparently the two of them had agreed beforehand that when the producers asked about this sort of thing, that they would be completely transparent and give the full truth. So not only did Christian lie about it, which already raises some questions, why did you not tell the truth? But they specifically talked about this beforehand and he still didn't. I will say that the details here, I think, do make a difference. Because it's one thing if they talked this morning and said, what are we going to tell the producers? And then Christian lied. But I think it would be very different if in the beginning of this whole filming experience, they talked just generally like, hey, what should we tell them about stuff? Oh, we're pretty honest with each other. We'll just tell them whatever happens. Okay, yeah, let's do that. And then now, months later, when you do something physical and the producers and cameras are in your face, like, yeah, tell us the juicy details. You're like, I don't know, we hooked up, whatever. I think in that scenario, it could be a little understandable. So while we don't know those details, we do have Christian's explanation of why he lied, which was to protect Cleo? It could be that if we were to ask him about it and he was given an opportunity to fully present his case as to why he thinks this would protect Cleo, maybe it would make more sense and we could understand him. As it stands, it's hard not to conclude that this has something to do with him being ashamed of being with a trans woman. And like I said, if I was Cleo, I would already be feeling pretty bad and hurt that my partner would talk about it in such a crude way. But if then I thought that they were being so crude about it because they were ashamed of some sort of core part of my identity and they just didn't like the idea of being seen with me like that, that'd kill me. That'd feel so bad. That would feel so rejecting on such a fundamental level. It'd be hard not to feel like I must be a fool or stupid for letting this happen to me. Again, maybe if he had the opportunity and we were able to hear his full explanation of how this was protecting her, maybe we'd understand it and it would make more sense. But as it stands, it doesn't look like a very good excuse. And it actually looks like it fits the pattern that I suggested in my first video about him. That he could be the kind of guy that is very unaware with his real feelings, that frequently acts or behaves in a way that doesn't really seem to align with their true character, and shows a pattern of incongruency between their actions and what they say.
Christian has always been very forward and, flirtatious. For him to now say that he is somebody who likes to wait for women to make the first move, I don't buy it.
People that say they're just really into you and really love you, but really they're just not that aware of their own feelings and how to differentiate between love and infatuation, or because they feel very uncomfortable in social situations and feel an anxious energy to fill the gap, that they mistake the anxious energy for an actual genuine extroverted nature. Or they experiment with their sexual partners by being with a trans woman and might feel ashamed or embarrassed and either not really know that or kind of know that but feel too scared to really admit that to themselves. So they just come up with excuses that have to deal with, well, I was protecting you, this was all for you, or it wasn't because I'm a bad guy. Wait a minute. Didn't they actually say in his introduction that he falls in love with everyone really quickly and very deeply and then like moves on in a month or two?
I have been called starry-eyed Christian before, where I'm really, really infatuated with somebody for a time and then maybe it just doesn't work out. And then as soon as they're gone, somebody else is there.
And people like that, it doesn't necessarily make them a bad person. They may not be doing it intentionally, but one of the side effects of not being able to really understand your emotions that well is that you get situations like this. Leading people on, breaking promises, disappointing people. If Christian just said, yeah, I know we agreed on it, but once the camera like got in my face, I got kind of anxious and I don't really like talking about my sex life like that. So I just kind of panicked and said, just it's not a big deal. We just hooked up. Or maybe even, I was super into it last night and I was actually pretty comfortable, but once he left and I was alone and then I'm getting asked all these questions, I started to get nervous and I started questioning things. This whole thing is still pretty new to me and, I'm sorry that I'm going back and forth a little bit, but, I do still love you and I thought it was a good time, but, I think I just gotta continue to take it slow and just process things as they come. I think both of those answers would be pretty understandable. And although Cleo might not like hearing them, I would guess that she'd probably understand them too. And at the very least, wouldn't feel hurt and betrayed and like she's a fool like the way she feels right now. Just be honest about it, if you can. That's it for today's video. Thanks everyone for watching and let me know what you thought about these couples in the comments below. If you like this video, then hit subscribe, hit the like button, ring the bell for notifications, and every comment helps the algorithm. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.